Hello everyone and welcome to Transatlantic Watch Party. I'm Cara.
I'm Dan.
And today, because it is the mid-season break for 911, which we've been watching together, we are watching Pan Am Episode 1, which is just called Pilot. And I immediately thought of, the worst joke that they could do, which is called the second episode, Stewardess.
Oh, they didn't do that, did they? I'm looking at the...
I don't think they did. Oh, Auntie, hi. Someone has joined us on our TikTok live. Yes, just because obviously all pilot episodes are called Pilot, but this is about, in part, a pilot.
Right.
And
Pilot.
So what did you think of it, Dan?
I really liked it. I thought it was a great overall episode. I was surprised by it. I've heard of this show. I remember when it first came out, it was like this big hit and it was like critically acclaimed. Everyone thought it was great. I just never really, it was like at the time when I had other stuff going on. I think I had young kids at the time, didn't have time to watch it. And I've kind of gone in a bit of a Pan Am, sorry, my kids are cooking something upstairs, if you can hear the bang around. I've been going on a bit of a, down a bit of a rabbit hole with Pan Am because I watched a documentary recently about the first flight across the Pacific, which was something that Pan Am did. Which I found it really interesting given the things that happened later in the episode, because that documentary was all about how basically Pan Am worked hand in hand with the American government to build bases across the Pacific so they could fly from San Francisco to Hong Kong. And then that's how the Americans kind of created their foothold across the Pacific. So to see them in that scenario later on when they're at the Bay of Pigs, which completely threw me. I'm like, whoa, what are we doing with this stuff? I really like that part, and it totally made sense to me because of its history. The Pan Am had very close ties with the American government, and it was always doing stuff like that, flying people out of situations like that. So.
Well, you definitely, because I love a documentary, so you definitely need to tell me what that documentary is so that I can find it and watch it.
I can't remember what it's called.
Sorry.
Henry documentary.
I'll just Google Pan Am documentary. I was completely surprised by it because I expected it to be this sort of glossy, not terribly serious drama. And then, spoiler, for part of the, it's in the opening sort of 10 minutes, but one of them's a spy. I was just like, oh.
That was cool. This is the early 60s, is the heart of the Cold War. And of course, the Pan Am was in a good position to be going back and forth between Europe and the US. And so, yeah, they want somebody keeping an eye on the passengers, apparently.
And I absolutely did not know that there was going to be anything sort of that thriller-esque in this show. Because the first thing that you see is the very glossy, it's the pilot walking through and, a little boy looking up to him and he's saluting the little boy and the little boy's thrilled and oh, these people are so glamorous and they're celebrities and everybody wants to be them or do something else to them. These are very attractive, high-powered, high-class people. And then you see the girls, the stewardesses going in for their weigh-in. And I was just throwing stuff at my TV at that point, oh, this is gross.
Well, I don't know if they're going to get more into that later in the series. They kind of glossed over it, but they all kind of seem to accept the fact that they have to weigh in and they all have to wear girdles. And they have to follow. I'm sure they have to be. There was something about they can't be married, right? That came up later in the episode. Is that you have to retire if you're going to get married? So
say it. In the background, as Margot Robbie is, maybe she's having the conversation or she's just walking through, but in the background, characters off screen, you can hear them say, girls can fly until they're married or turn 32. That's the rules. So incredible stuff. Yeah, and the woman who is doing the weigh-in, I was like, oh, I know her, and I don't like her. Why don't I like her? It was because she's in Erin Brockovich, and she is the woman who when the evil business sends their lawyers in, and Erin's like, she's about to drink the water, and she goes, "Oh, do you want to drink that water? That's from, Hinkley? Is it Hinkley?" And she's the woman that doesn't drink the water, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't like you."
She's good in that scene for sure, and she's like, even at the end there, where like clearly Margot. I mean, we'll get to know the characters' names. We'll call her Margot Robbie until we know her character's name. Sorry, I have it here actually. And
Laura. She's Laura. Is she Laura?
Margot Robbie's Laura Cameron. Yes, Laura Cameron, and her sister is Kate. Yes. So Kate is the one who's the spy. So Laura is new to this, and she's just happened to be featured on the cover of Life magazine as like a stewardess. Like the jet age is here, and it's like this lovely photo of her smiling as she comes off the plane. And everyone knows it's her and recognizes her and stuff like that. She's a bit of a celebrity, and her sister doesn't like this because her sister has been a stewardess for a while, right? And now it seems like that her, I guess, little sister, I'm assuming. I don't know. It doesn't really specify which one is older. Oh yeah, she's the younger sister. It says here on Wikipedia. I guess, she's jealous of her sister for getting all the attention when she's really just feels like she's jumping on her coattails, right?
Yes. They have an interesting relationship, which this episode does a series of flashbacks to give us, the backstory. It was a good episode in terms of both introducing just the specifics of the character now, but also feeding into where they came from. And their sisterly relationship seems quite interesting because they seem quite really close.
At times, yes, absolutely. Like I was kind of surprised in some of the interactions.
Yeah, but then there's something about, because I think even Kate says it, "Oh, you could come and be a stewardess," or does Laura say, "Maybe I'll be a stewardess"? And Kate is like, not into that.
No.
And that's before she's been hit up to be a spy. So I don't know whether she was like, "I really like you as a sister, but this stewardessing thing is the only place I can get out from underneath your incredibly beautiful shadow." So there seemed to be something that she didn't want her to follow her into that profession.
I think so. I think she's probably in their whole life, she's been like the more attractive sister, and she's probably got more attention. And clearly the mother dotes on her and that kind of thing. The mother's another. I love that actress. She's it's Lilith from Frasier. I don't remember the her actual name, but she's the one who plays the mother is amazing. There's a lot of familiar faces in this show. And so she's upset about that. But then I think that's why she takes on the spy thing, because she needs to feel something, a new purpose in her job, right? Because now she's got her sister kind of tag along. So now she's going to be a spy, and that's now going to drive her as far as that's my thing. I'm going to make a difference as a helping the CIA or whatever it is. Or the, what's the British one? Sorry.
MI5.
MI5.
MI6. We have two of them. I don't know which one does what. I don't know what does what.
Or like the record, the Canadian one is called CSIS. 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 Nobody knows that.
Okay, that's good. I know I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. That's very good. Because I wrote down she's a spy or FBI or something, because I don't know. There's the CIA, there's the FBI. They call them the feds. I think that's the FBI. I don't know who would be talking to the British. I think it might be the CIA. I don't know. There's too many government agencies in America.
Especially this time in the 60s, they were running rampant. They had guys all over the place doing stuff. So, yeah, this is quite serious.
Yeah. And Kate, the sister who is doing her first job as a spy, I was like, where do I know you from? So, of course, I had to look her up. And she is Margot in Lars and the Real Girl, which is a film absolutely adored. So I was so thrilled because I don't think I've seen her in anything else. So I was so thrilled to see her in this. And then we go to Christina Ricci's character, Maggie. Margot.
Yeah, I love the way they introduced her character. I got a real Mad Men vibe from that whole apartment situation, and just that seeing that side of the 60s represented in those few minutes. She got her beatnik, whoever friend, he was mooching off her and clearly writing his manifesto, very important to him, whatever he's writing. And she's just like, come on, whatever. And she gets flown in by helicopter. That was really glamorous. So that was very, very cool. That whole intro was awesome. I loved seeing it. Although it's probably all CGI, but still.
So glamorous to get changed in the back of a cab. Yes,
That was funny, actually. That was quite funny. I read these things.
I just loved that it was like the first thing we hear her say is he goes, "Oh, is that like, you know," and I'm sure he doesn't say Freud because that's not a philosopher, but he said,
well, that might use Mark.
And she's like, it's Nietzsche, or, you know, like, and so she's smart. Immediately we are told this is one smart cookie. And we also find out that she has been grounded because she didn't wear her girdle, because there's an obsession with girdles. And so we know that she is smart and rebellious. And they told us that in the space of like 3 seconds. And I liked that.
But she's also valued enough for them to fly her across the city in a helicopter, right? They need her immediately because they've lost this other what do they call it? A purser? Has gone missing. So they have to get her there, and that just shows how the importance of the character and kind of her experience, I think, came through in that. And as soon as she gets on the plane, she knows what she's doing, and everybody else is kind of deferring to her as well. So I thought that's kind of cool.
And it's great because we actually don't really see much more of her for the rest of the episode. So that's really her big scene. But you are instantly she's played by Christina Ricci. You kind of know she's going to be a big deal in this show. But considering in the first episode we don't see much of her, the little introduction we get is so informative, and I thought that was some really good writing. And he says to her, "Get your fanny down here," and I always laugh at that because fanny means something different here. Because fanny in America, and I don't know, maybe for you guys as well, means bum. You know, so you have like fanny packs, which we call bum bags. And the fanny is the other side.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that doesn't make sense.
So for him to say to a woman who is a stewardess in a very sexist industry, in a very sexist, you know, time, "Get your fanny down here," kind of works for both, I think.
That's pretty funny. We also have Colette Valois, the French stewardess who sees someone familiar as she's getting on the plane and is looking forward to seeing him again. This is someone who she's had a romantic. I mean, it's pretty clear immediately what happened, and he's surprised to see her, but she's like, "Oh, this isn't a bad thing. You know, we have fun," kind of thing. But then he turns out he has a family as he's getting on, and that's an awkward situation. When he went on the plane with his wife and his kid, they're flying to London together.
And she's so cute. I love Colette. She was done very dirty in this episode.
Yeah,
but like, when they're getting on the plane, I was just fascinated by the plane as well. They used to walk you to your seat.
Well, the plane seems huge to me. Is it just here? It's and they've got like a lounge area in the back. Did you notice that? Like at one point, David Harbour, who we haven't even talked about yet, he's a guest star. He's like in the back, kind of going through his paperwork, sitting on a couch. So they just have like a place where people can go. I guess for like a 6+ hour flight, you would need a place for them to get out of their seat and stretch their legs a bit. I don't think that exists anymore, though.
Yeah. I don't think we should use the word need because they've decided we don't need it anymore. And the width of the aisle, the two people could walk side by side down the aisle. Yeah. So absolutely insane stuff, you know. And I was absolutely bowled over. Then when Maggie arrives, I am sure that when we first saw Christina Ricci, she had like longish, straggly hair, and when she turns up at the airport, she's got it in a very sleek bob, and I'm like, she did an incredible job with her hair on that helicopter. Like, I don't know how she did it, but that's why they pay her the big bucks.
Like she's worth flying across the city.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So basically the whole thing is kind of the premise of this is around this the Clipper, this brand new plane that's going to be flying this, you know, across the ocean from US to Europe. It's called the Clipper Majestic. All the Pan Am planes had the Clipper something, they were called that. And so Core Majestic apparently is a fictional plane, but it's meant to represent like a typical airliner that would be operating at this time. And so we also meet the pilots for the plane, the pilot and co-pilot, and then the guy that sits behind them. I don't know what his deal is, but he was they mentioned him a couple times, and he got a line or two.
He's like, yeah, I don't know what his job is, but you see them, like I remember seeing a guy like him in Airplane, you know, like I know there's always a guy who sits there and like twiddles the knobs and does like, is he the navigator? What's he doing?
It must be, because he was also calling out altitude. The one guy, the co-pilot's giving him a hard time because this guy, the pilot captain, has just been promoted. This is his first like solo mission as a captain, and his friend is the co-pilot. And he's giving him the gears. He says, "I don't think I can call you captain." And then meanwhile, the guy in the back said, 35,000 feet captain. He has no problem calling him captain. And yeah, he is like the navigator. Whatever he is something that's not required anymore, because I'm sure there's not 3 people in the cockpit anymore. There's only ever 2 now.
Yeah. Don't think, like, I think a computer took that guy's job.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Because I don't think all that gear is there either. I think it's just a little screen that they look, you know, the little dials. I mean, we saw the inside of a cockpit in 911, and there was not a third person in there. So yeah. And so when they're boarding everyone onto the plane, and Maggie's rushing in, and the pilot's being all pleased with himself, and his friend being a dick, which I really enjoyed. David Harbour shows up. Now, you had told me that David Harbour was in this, and I didn't expect him to be playing the character he was playing. Now, this was my impression when we first met him. I didn't think he was going to be some, like, Russian dissident or whatever, you know. And she had to try and get his passport and change his visa so that he'd be picked up in the, you know, so that he couldn't get through customs in the UK, and then the Americans could come in and sweep in and arrest her, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's who David Harbour's playing. Interesting. He's the one the feds are after, or the CIA, or whoever.
I wasn't surprised to see him playing a Russian. I guess maybe that came from that last season of Stranger Things when he spent the entire time in a Russian prison. And I don't remember, although I don't think he actually does a Russian accent during that either, but I just feel like he goes with a Russian accent well. And it was very nice to see him. He just kind of like, you know, looks at his papers and grumbles around, and he provides a good target for Kate to, like, it was like really nerve-wracking watching her try to like take the passport and then switch it back, and all the other stuff going on around her. She's trying to get her sister to distract him. It's pretty
And when he sits down, she's like, "Can I take your coat? Because the passport might be in the coat." And he goes, "No." And she goes, "Can I take your briefcase?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "How am I going to," you know, and already we're like on the edge of our seat of like how she's going to be able to do what she needs to do. David Harbour, does he have a Russian accent in Black Widow?
Yes,
Yep.
that's right. He does. And then he's going to be doing that one again. That's the new movie coming out next spring. The Thunderbolts. He's doing that accent. That's why it feels right to have him with an Russian accent.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we get a flashback to the what I like to call the runaway bride situation, which is Laura, Margot Robbie, is meant to be marrying Greg. I can't remember what his name was. We didn't ever meet him. And Kate has like just arrived because she's been working, and so she's like throwing her outfit together, and Laura's like having a panic attack because she doesn't want to do it, and everyone is there like at their house all ready for the ceremony to start, and Kate very much encourages her to ditch it and leave.
Well, she comes in the room and she's having a panic attack, very clearly having a panic attack, saying, "I don't want to do this, but I don't know what to do because everyone's here." And she's saying, "You don't have to." Like, I think that was her saving her at that point, right? Like, she really is like, because I could see how she could, with the mother of that domineering and that situation in the 60s where you're very much encouraged just to marry and have kids and da-da-da, she would feel trapped, right? She doesn't really want to marry this guy. She doesn't want to be in this life. She wants to, it's very clear. There's a nice shot where they show her like looking at a globe, like as she's looking around the world. She's looking at her sister's Pan Am hat. She wants to be doing what her sister's doing very clearly, right? She wants to be a Pan Am stewardess. So, yeah, that just made sense to me, and I'm glad she did it. I'm glad. It was so much fun watching them take off, and it was really.
She reversed the car into another car, and then they like drove down the bank, onto the road, and it was absolute chaos. And the mum running after them, kind of telling them that the service has already started or whatever, you can't leave now. Yeah, I was very pro Kate in that moment. I thought that was excellent sisterly duties done there. Good on her. And then we went to another flashback. We might have had the scene in between there where Ted was saying to Dean, like, I can't call you Captain. It's ridiculous. I'd say it in Spanish. I'll say it in Italian. But then we got another flashback. So the wedding was 6 months ago. And then we go to Rome, which is 3 months ago. And we know, and I was like, oh, so Rome's going to be the Colette story, because they'd said when she was like, John, they'd said, oh, is that the guy from Rome? And I went, okay, so we've had the Kate and Laura backstory. Now we're going to fill in Colette's. But we didn't really, because it turned out to be about Dean and Bridget, who is the purser who didn't show up for her job.
Right. The one that Christina Ricci was replacing, right?
Yes. And she was there obviously having a fling. And he's like, I want to take you out for lunch. And she goes, oh, I'm meeting Kate. And then when she meets Kate, Kate is already speaking to a random American man in Rome. So we think. And then it turns out that he knows a lot of stuff about her. And then he's like, do you want to be a spy?
I just thought thinking, like, there's a lot of, maybe it's just because I just watched Casablanca recently, and there's like a lot of like men approaching women in that movie, and this is like just men just approaching women in a coffee shop or wherever they happen to be, like just talking to them. I don't think you could really get away with that these days. Just going up to a random woman saying hi and so what do you do or whatever. I don't know, how would he strike up a conversation with her in that situation, right?
Well, yeah, but there is something about like both being Americans in Italy.
Yeah,
maybe that's a good in, that like she orders a coffee. And even though she's trilingual, whether he like picks up that there's an accent and he's like, hey, are you American? And she's like, yeah, you're American. And then that's your in, But also, he's a spy. He's just good at that. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's been trained for that.
For sure.
And when Dean is talking to Bridget, and he's like, oh, he wants her to put off this lunch with Kate. He says to her, tell her you got rerouted. And I thought that he was kind of like joking, like that's how they talk to each other. So like telling her you got rerouted is like airline speak for tell her you're meeting someone else. Mm-hmm. But then when she gets to the restaurant, she does actually tell her that she got rerouted. She goes, oh no, they need me on a flight to Barcelona or whatever. And I was like, oh, I just thought that was like, a little inside joke, but no.
Well, as it turns out, she was setting up her replacement, right? She was wanting to either be together anyway. So it worked out that she could go off with what's his name and have a little bit of fun. Okay.
So then we could move on to Kate trying to get this passport. And this is when the Russian guy is in that lounge area. And he's got his briefcase open and she can see the passport on the top of the briefcase. So she like distracts him with her sister, I think, being like, oh, this is the girl on the Life magazine, blah, blah, blah. And she takes his passport from the very top of his briefcase. It's very clearly there.
Bright red passport, by the way, very brightly red. And so we can all see it very clearly.
Yeah. And he has a chat with whoever and she's leaving and he says, because she's picked up a load of magazines to steal the passport in, and he says, that's my Life magazine. And she goes, no, your Life magazine is there in your briefcase. And I'm like, don't draw attention to his briefcase. Because he's going to look down and immediately go, where's my passport? But he did not.
Well, he forgot he put his passport there and oh yeah, that is my Life magazine, never mind.
Yeah. He hadn't been staring at it because he knew it was a plot point, like I had been staring at it because I knew it was a plot point. So,
Yeah.
And then we go to Cuba and the Bay of Pigs, and I was meant to look up what the Bay of Pigs was, and I didn't. So can you? I've heard of it. I think I probably listened to an entire podcast episode about it that has receded to the back of my mind. So can you fill me a little bit?
Well, I don't even remember if I remember. I definitely had an obsession with it at some point. To go on these tangents of like have to obsessively research different things that happened. So I've definitely looked into it. It was during Kennedy's presidency, so it was early '60s before Kennedy was assassinated, and it was an attempt to blame Cuba. I think they were trying to set up Cuba. They were trying to make it look like Cuba was invading or something, but it was a fake invading force hired by the U.S. government, and they were trying to like stage a coup so they could take Castro out of power. That's kind of what it was meant to be, I believe. They were like, they'd done it before. They did it in like Iran or something like that. They did it in another country, and so they're trying to do it again so they get Castro out of power, install their own leader who would be more, nicer for American interests. So what they're doing in this situation is there was a number of people who were hostages, I guess, who were like not, need to get out of there. And so to get them out, the government used Pan Am to fly them out, which they did a lot in these situations, right? Pan Am was kind of like the ferry for the U.S. government when they couldn't fly their own military stuff in there for obvious reasons. If it was a military plane, they probably would have been, shot at or something like that, right? So
I was absolutely mind blown that Pan Am, and like that, it's not only that it's a Pan Am plane, but it's Pan Am crew that are just in this situation, and I was absolutely shocked and kind of appalled by it, that they were put in this position because they didn't seem to absolutely understand. They knew where they were going and maybe what they were doing, but they didn't realize how many people were going to be trying to get on this plane, and it was terrifying.
At one point, somebody says we weren't supposed to be getting out the plane, right? They didn't think that they were just going to have to load on passengers and get out of there. And yeah, I love seeing the contrast. To me, it was really the contrast between that plane and that era of Pan Am and the brand new jetliner that they're in, that they're flying across the ocean in, which is like the brand new technology. And then seeing the contrast with that prop engine plane and all the inside of it was all these switches that looked ancient compared to the new stuff. And so that history Pan Am.
I did not even notice that. Yeah, no, I didn't even see it because I was so concentrated on the people and I was so terrified that they weren't going to get out. Even though, I knew they would because it's all the same characters. Like they all made it. And so Bridget arrives late. They haven't got Bridget, and Dean won't let them because it's an older pilot. And Dean is the co-pilot at this point. And so Bridget isn't on board, and the pilot's like, well, we have to go because they're going to start shooting at us or whatever they're going to do. And Bridget arrives at the very last minute because Dean has got off the plane, and he proposes to her, and she is downright horrified.
Yeah.
She's got this look on her face of like, when did I ever give you the impression that I wanted to marry you?
Well, but they try to set it up at the beginning when they're saying, oh, you're going to land yourself a good husband, right? And we didn't know at that time. And then his sister's like, trust us. She doesn't, right? Because she just left her husband however long ago. That was Margot Robbie's character. But in the 60s, there was still this expectation that a woman was supposed to marry a husband and settle down and have kids. That was still very much. That's something that is also explored in Mad Men quite a bit. But it was very much there was a lot of pressure on young women to just settle down and have kids, right? And it's very clear they did not want to do that.
What was the year where women couldn't have their own credit cards until the 70s or something? So there's definitely, they're still relying on a husband, and so he gives her his Pan Am pin as a, sort of stand-in, he's like, you don't have to. She says, I can't say yes. And he's like, well, then you don't have to say yes now. You can say yes later, because she's like, you're proposing now? Are you out of your mind? And so that's I think the last we see of her until the very, very end
of the episode, because then we go back to the plane and Kate is now dealing with, she's got the passport and she's trying to get into like the loo, and she spills all the stuff on it. She finally gets the passport sorted, and she puts the passport back. Oh, I think I've skipped a bit. The bit with the Colette's guy, John.
Oh yeah. Well, this is a weird one. So he's there again. They're playing in the lounge area where this kid could just color to his heart's content, and then she comes and helps. I guess they do have a conversation, right? The two of them have a conversation about it.
Yeah, he's like trying to be like, it's not really. It was almost as though he was leading into like, I'm gonna leave her, but he never got there because she was just brushing him off. And then she sees them in the lounge. He goes and sits down with them in the lounge area. And the wife is like, can you sit with us? Are you allowed to chat with the clientele? And she's like, yeah. So they sit down and have like a nice little awkward one-to-one.
Right. Now, can we skip ahead on this one just to the end? Because this is like very wrapped up very quickly at the end of it. But like, so we have like, she has this confrontation with, and then we see a flashback to their actual encounter, right? And it seems very much like they did not talk. It was like they had this attraction in the hotel. They just happen to have rooms next to each other. She unlocks the door. He goes through it, and they just immediately like hook up. Like this is like animal magnetism. Like they just sheer passion kind of stuff. So it didn't sound like they did a lot of talking. So like, I don't really like, as far as she's concerned, he is, single. He's a guy that just is happened to be, and they had fun, and that's it. And I don't know. They didn't really seem to let us know how they left it. As far as like, did they leave it and say they're going to talk again? I don't remember.
They should think so. She was surprised to see him, and I think it was more like, oh, he's on my flight again. Bonus. I felt slightly more like she was just, maybe I'll get to hook up with him again because she obviously liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the wife pretends to forget something, or
okay, here's like question though: did she know the whole time? Yeah, she pretends to forget something. They go back on the plane. She goes with her, and then while they're alone, now this is where I thought Colette was going to tell the wife that she cheated, like her husband cheated on her, and she didn't know. Like I totally thought Colette was going to have her moment of, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that he was married, and you should get rid of this guy. But no, the wife turns around and says, don't sleep with other women's wives. Like it's her fault or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I was fuming. I wrote down in my notes, Colette didn't know. Like, she can't be accused of home wrecking when she didn't know that there was a home to be wrecked. This is not on Colette. This is very much on the guy. But I think the wife knew the whole time. I think that's why she got her to sit down with them. I think she knew from the minute that Colette called across the airport, hey, John,
Right, yeah.
Like, oh. And then she did what, like you say, like women are, kind of under the protection of the men, and so I suppose at that point you do maybe go, you have to back off my man, rather than, my man's a piece of shit.
Like, what are you gonna do before? I feel like he's done this before, right? And she's probably used to it, and this is like worn off all these stewardesses or whatever.
Oh, seriously, he needs to be put back in his box. And then yes, we get Kate. They're starting to deplane, whatever. They're getting off, and he's digging through his briefcase, the Russian guy, looking for his passport. And, Kate gets all sneaky and like gets him distracted with something else and puts the passport just right back onto, she slips it under like one piece of paper, but it's so obviously there. And I'm like, at least shove it at the bottom. Because he's been looking for it, and then he's going to look and go, oh, it was there all along. Like, and he's a paranoid man. Why wouldn't this, set him off?
Yes.
So I was very pleased when, slightly skipping ahead, when she gets to her hotel and he is sitting in her hotel room, and I was terrified because I didn't know what was going on. And then he started speaking in a British accent, and I really didn't know what was going on. And then it sort of, I figured it out. And he works for MI5, MI6, whichever one. And he says, this was a test. Do you really think that we would give you a job without testing you? And you passed. Barely. And I'm like, yes! Yeah, it was a skin of her teeth. She got through that.
And then he says something about the actual jobs we'll have for you will be easier than this, or something like that.
Yes.
You won't have to get any passport switching. We just thought we'd catch you with that one.
Even if she does, like, he was making her job difficult. Like, he wouldn't give her her coat or his briefcase, and he was always, like, in her face, and he did that thing with the You've Got My Life magazine to obviously see how she would react to that. So he was really putting her through her paces. But I just think, I know it's the 60s and they don't have the internet and you can't check things, but if a man approaches me, if I'm in Italy and a man approaches me and he's like, hey, I know some stuff about you. Do you want to work for me? I work for the American government. I'm like, prove it. Then he gives her this stuff. She does her job, what she considers to be her job, and handles this Russian situation. And then the Russian guy turns up in her hotel room and is actually British and says, I'm your handler on this end. Again, I would be like, prove it. How do you trust anyone?
Yeah. As far as you know, you only met two strange men here who are both like just showing up in random spots.
Yeah, they could be anyone, and you could be like, you could be being completely played. How do you know that the Russian guy isn't the Russian guy pretending to be a British guy? Like, I couldn't do it. I'd be so paranoid all the time. I'd just be covered in sweat and I'd give myself away immediately.
I have to say, for some reason, David Harbour with a Russian accent, I have no problem with. David Harbour with a British accent, weird. I find it, I don't know why. He seems like this hard man. Hearing like kind of the soft British accent come out of him, it feels like, he needs to be, I'm American. He feels like he's American or Russian. That's it. It's only two things he can be.
Yes. He can only have like a strongman accent. He can't sound like you grabbed. That's wrong. But I thought his English accent was good. I was pleased with that. I was impressed by the hotel rooms that the stewardesses get. Very nice hotel rooms. That I'm sure that doesn't happen anymore either. And that's when we find out that Bridget was right, who set her up. And she's like, and the way he said Bridget was this, I thought maybe Bridget was dead.
Me too. I thought that's what they were going with. I thought he was going to, and so we hear like over the course of this, the pilot is checking out, what's his name again? Dean? It's checking on her, right? So he's called in and he's saying, can you check on this, who was supposed to be our purser? She didn't show up. And then it says, oh, she's quit. She's lost, whatever. And so then they're all like saying, oh, congrats. They all think that that's because they're getting married. And he doesn't say anything to say no. He doesn't say, well, she didn't have to give me an answer. He just kind of goes with it.
He calls, when they get to London, he calls the flat that because she's British, that she should have been in, and he gets the call put through, and he starts speaking immediately, doesn't let her say hello, and says, "This is a really weird way for you to tell me yes." And it would have been a great way for her to tell him yes, to just not turn up to work because she can't, because now she's engaged. I thought that would have been really cute. But then the woman is like, the operator, this number's been cut off. So he goes to the flat and there's nothing there. And then we see them all in the pub and Bridget is looking through the window at them. And I was like, oh, she's not dead. She's an even more undercover spy now, clearly. She'd be
Do you think she's going to come back?
I think so, yes. Yeah. I think her name was maybe in the main cast rather than a guest star.
Oh, you know what? She won the recurring. On Wikipedia, it's got David Harbour is recurring because David Harbour is her handler in England, so I guess he will be there. in upcoming episodes. And then she's also recurring character as well, as is the CIA handler on the American side.
Oh, there you go. CIA. Not FBI.
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking through some of the other characters to see if there's anything.
Yeah, anything you can pick up on in the,
that we missed about. We talked about everybody else. Again, I was impressed. I kind of like to see, like, there's only 14 episodes, right? So I don't know how where they're going to go with this, but there's so much potential for us to kind of explore different aspects of the 60s. I love 60s culture historically. Like, I'm just obsessed over the 60s for years. And this is just a really neat point in aviation history. I think this is when like the world was opening up because this technology was allowing people to travel so quickly between places. It's a very interesting series for that reason.
And I did like the fact that there were two things. Ted calls them when they're sitting, all the women are sitting at a table together, and then the pilot and the co-pilot are sitting at the bar, and Ted, the co-pilot, says to Dean, they're a new breed of women because they have this freedom. And Dean says something like, don't ground them. That's what we have, like, we have to not ground these women. Like, you have to just let them fly. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I really liked how they were talking about it. But then the very last thing we see is the pilots going through the airport and the stewardesses, the four of them, like the gang, walking through the airport. And just like at the beginning, we had that little boy looking at the pilot, like that's his dream to be a pilot. You saw this little girl looking at the stewardesses just after they'd been having this conversation about this new breed of women who are free to do more of what they want and see the world and have experiences and meet people. And that's her dream, And I thought that was a really nice parentheses on the episode. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I think it was very true at the time. Like, this was, again, a very exciting field to be in. They were celebrities. Everyone was looking at them. I love the order that when, like, just going back to the opening shot in the airport, I loved like how orderly everything was and how nice it seemed. Like, there's not like this. It's just the bygone era of travel, right? We don't get that anymore.
Yeah. Everyone was like, there were enough staff there that people could individually deal with your bags, and and everyone was dressed like, all the guys who worked in the airport were dressed like pilots. Like they were like it was a very, very lovely thing. And I feel for the people who've lost that. I mean, it's bad enough. I've been at sort of this sort of level of capitalism my whole life, but those people. Yeah, who used to have spacious houses and spacious cars and spacious airplanes, traveling must be a nightmare for them now. They, with your knees up to your ears and stuff, horrible. And I did notice just that it was directed by Thomas Schlamme. I think that's how you say his name, I'm not sure. And I was like, I know that name. Where do I know that name from? So, of course, I IMDb'd him. And he was The West Wing. He produced and directed a number of episodes on The West Wing.
Oh, okay. I recognize the name something Sims, Paul Sims or someone Sims. And it was only because I was watching another show recently called News Radio. Have you ever seen News Radio?
No, not heard of that.
It's an old sitcom from the 90s that stars Dave Foley from The Kids in the Hall. Do you know what The Kids in the Hall are?
I know a little bit about Kids in the Hall. Yes, that's the Canadian, isn't it? Kids in the Hall. Yes.
Yeah, very much a big Canadian sketch comedy group, and so they all kind of went off in the 90s. And after they had their show, they went off and had their own little things in the U.S. And so Dave Foley had a sitcom, and it's also got lots of recognized, like Andy Dick is in it, Bill Hartman, a lot of big names, and it's a really funny show. So I've been watching that, and I can't remember why I was talking about it. What was I talking about to get me on?
Paul Sims.
Oh yeah, Paul Sims is a producer of that too. Same producer who produced this. So I just noticed those names. It's like that other guy that does 911 and Angel. There's a guy who works on both of those shows.
Yes, and I know who you mean.
but all I can think of is one name, and it's not that guy. There's a guy who worked on Buffy who is called Scott Wankum. Wankum, and I've never got over it. And so
I love it.
I do.
Why are you being a funny nonsense noise?
Scott Wankum. Jim Lanier is who I'm thinking of. Jim Lanier is a producer on 911, and he's also on and he did a bunch of the shows with Joss Whedon back in the day.
He's the official showrunner of 911. Okay. He was the showrunner for the first 4 seasons, I think, and then he went off and did the 911 Lone Star thing, and then he came back last season to run the show when they moved back to ABC. But yes, yeah, Scott Wankum. I'm a child. I'm so sorry. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to episode 2, Stewardess. It's not called that.
No, it's called We'll Always Have Paris is the name of the episode. That seems like fun.
So I have no idea where it's going because so Kate's got a storyline. She's a spy. That's going on. But what's going to happen with Maggie and what's going to happen with, Colette? So I have no idea where any of this is going. And I don't know when they found out that they were not being renewed. And I hope that we are not left on a horrible cliffhanger at the end of season 1. Possible.
They didn't get through a full season of, when I was looking at this, it was canceled in February, and it wasn't. There were talks of bringing it to another network at the time, so it wasn't officially canceled until like June of later that year of 2012. So they might not have wrapped it up. I don't think they
It might not even be like a full season. They might have been aiming for like 22 or 26 episodes, and they only got 14.
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll see.
Oh no! Stuff like that's a nightmare. I'm watching Lucifer with some other international friends of mine. So I watched this with you in Canada, me in the UK, and I watched Lucifer and The Rookie with 2 of my friends, one in America and one in Germany. So but we watched that at the same time, and we text like crazy during the show. And Lucifer, we've just got to the end of season 3. Lucifer was cancelled at the end of season 3. And then it moves to Netflix. But before they knew it was moving to Netflix, something must have happened because they had these 2 seemingly spare episodes that maybe they were like, oh, we filmed them. We were going to use them in season 4, but now we don't think we're getting season 4. So they shoved them like at the end of season 3. So that you get this real big finale, huge. The moment that you've all been waiting for 3 seasons happens. And so, we were screaming each other on text. And then, all of a sudden, you get these 2 episodes that never talk about what happened at the end of episode, 24. And we've been so confused watching the final 2 episodes as they've put them out of season 3, because they don't make any sense. So I'm really hoping that they actually talk about the thing that happened in the actual finale of season 3 in season 4 at some point, because these 2 random episodes that they put out as a gift for the fans now really don't work in the context of the whole show. It's very confusing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think going back to Pan Am, it's 2011, 2012. So this came out, it was after Mad Men. The Mad Men had caused this big boom in 60s kind of period piece dramas. There's a few of them that came out around that time. So this is one of those. And it did win some awards. It was real, people really did like it. And it was it wasn't, I think it might have been budgetary reasons why it was canceled. Or ratings. It didn't get ratings. I mean, if people don't watch it, then they're not going to keep it going, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, because I'm really, really interested. Some of the sort of camera work was a bit odd. It suddenly looked like they were working on a green screen or something, or that, and I was like, I can't quite figure out why this particular shot looks so out of place with everything else in this scene. Almost as though they went back and did reshoots and used a different lens. You know, it was there was something a bit weird every now and again with that kind of thing. But story-wise and writing-wise, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I actually thought there were some really good lines in it. I can't remember any off the top of my head. I didn't write any down. I'll try and pay attention next episode. There's some funny lines, but it was good writing, I thought.
Yeah. I thought they told the story very well. I thought as an opening episode, it was very good.
Sets up the series well. There's all kinds of places it can go. I would assume that if they were going to like keep this going for however many seasons they would want to do it, they would eventually take it to the end of Pan Am, like because that this is a company that did go out of business in the early 90s, so they could take it from like the 60s, 70s, 80s all the way to that point, and then show us how the company fell from grace. I don't know. I don't really know the story behind that, so be interesting to see. I guess we'll never get that.
No, and it's so disappointing. So what else have you been watching this week?
Well, like I said, news radio, I really enjoy it. It's one, Phil Hartman was on it when he died, and so he was replaced on the show by John Lovitz. And so he plays like this news reader. And for me, I like it because I worked in news. I was a news reader for a while. And it does kind of ring true a bit of it. Like there's some crazy, people working radio are crazy. Like they really are. And so, oh yes, and Joe Rogan is in it. A very young Joe Rogan is in this show.
Oh my God.
It's one of his only like actual acting jobs. After that, he went into like hosting things and whatever he ended up doing, but before he did this podcast. But yeah, it's got a very young Joe Rogan. And it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying that one. And then the other one I've been watching on a regular basis is Parks and Rec. I'm going through Parks and Rec and loving that show. It's a very, very good show.
Oh, is this your first watch of both of these?
No, not for Parks and Rec. I watched Parks and Rec when it was on TV back in the day, but it's my first time rewatching it since then. But it is my first time. Oh no, and for even news radio, I watched back in the day, but I never watched like, back when we watched TV, it was like, oh, see what's on, turn it on. If you miss it, you miss it. Didn't worry about it. You caught it in reruns maybe later, but I'm certain I never watched all of news radio all the way through like we do now. This is how we watch TV now. We just watch it one episode at a time. We have them all available to us. Whereas back then it was like, oh, if I happen to be home on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m., I'll watch news radio because it happens to be on. But I'm not going to make an effort to try and watch it next week. It's basically what I did.
Yeah. Well, I told you last week that I was watching Matlock, and you really surprised me by telling me that Matlock was a series before. And I loved the first episode so much that I invited my mum round to watch it because I thought she would enjoy it, and we always like to have a show that we're watching together because I live like 10 minutes away from my mum, and so she comes around once a week and we watch a show. And so I said, oh, you should come around and watch Matlock. And I Googled it, and it is called a reboot, but I don't really... It's kind of like they've just used the name, because like I told you, they talk about the series Matlock in the new series Matlock, which we do it. And so we watched that. She loved it, and we were like, brilliant, we will watch the rest of this. And then I found out that they're going to have a mid-season break. And I was like, I'm not putting up with this. So I told her that we'll wait on Matlock until all the episodes are available, and then we can watch it like normal people, just all the way through, without having 3 months off in the middle.
Do they? But let me ask you this: and I don't watch network TV anymore, but are they replacing these shows in their lineup with other shows? Like so 911's off for 3 months. Matlock is off for 3 months. Do they put something else in their lineup to replace it? Is that the idea here?
Yeah, I guess so. Because I think, like, what I've noticed is Will Trent and The Rookie are both coming back on the 7th of January. And I'm like, okay, so is something ending for their mid-season break? And then The Rookie and, Will Trent are replacing those shows. And then they go on their mid-season break. And then the other one comes back from its mid-season break. And so we're actually now staggering it so the two things will last across the whole year. Like, I don't know how it works. But also because I watch things on streaming, I don't really know how live TV works anymore.
But this is the problem. People are going to be making the same decision you are to wait until it's all released. I did the same thing with Stranger Things. Speaking of Stranger Things, is they did some weird scheduling thing where they release like 3, and they're going to do it again with the next season, like 3 or 4 episodes at a time, and then a few weeks or whatever. Because Netflix is the home of the binge. They always want to have everything released, but they don't. Everyone else has done the weekly release, right? Because they know they want to get people coming back. Whereas Netflix never wants to kind of give in to that. So they're always going to have a little bit release, like groups of episodes. But I hate that. People are going to make the decision to wait until it's all released. They can watch it all at once, that people like to binge. And it's just going to hurt the TV networks more than anybody else because nobody's going to be subscribed to cable anymore.
Yeah, it's such a weird system. But also, I mean, like, there was a show called Manifest, and I think it ran its course. And my friend Anna in Germany, who I watched The Rookie with, and Lucifer, she was watching it on Netflix, I think.
On Netflix, yeah.
And so she watched like the first 2 seasons, and then it went, go to next episode, and so she did. She just let the next episode play. And it was this huge time jump. And she was like, oh, wow, they've done this time jump and we're going to get flashbacks. And it turned out that no, they didn't have season 3. So she was just watching season 4. She had no idea that that's what had happened. So they didn't have all the seasons.
Oh, wow.
She had to go over to Amazon Prime to watch season 3. It was absolutely bonkers.
That happens with Parks and Rec. Certain episodes and certain seasons of Parks and Rec are not available on one streaming service, but they are on another. It's a rice thing. I don't know. It's very frustrating for sure when you're trying to watch the show.
I watched, the thing I've just finished watching was the first season of a mockumentary called Trial and Error, which I'd never heard of, but my friend recommended to me. And the thing is, I started watching the first episode, and it's like it's a murder, it's kind of like a true crime, thing. And I wrote to my friend who told me to watch it. I was like, Ollie, is this based on The Staircase? And he went, I've never seen it, but I think this season is meant to be based on The Staircase. Yes. And I was like, okay, because some of the things that happen in it, and it's not even like the big plot point is The Staircase, but there are, because I've seen the documentary of The Staircase and I've also watched the dramatization of The Staircase, so I like pretty familiar with this, and little things like him waving this knife around in front of people, and and I was just like, I feel really icky watching them take the mick out of something awful that happened. And I kind of managed to get over it, and I did watch the whole season, and it was genuinely delightful. It's so funny. And I thought, I know that the second season is also based on something, but it's not something that I know about, and maybe it will be easier for me to watch because I won't have such sort of conflicting emotions about it. But I don't know, the second season just feels way sillier. And again, maybe it's because I don't know what it's grounded in. But I did think the first season, I said to my friend Ollie, I said, I really enjoyed it and I kind of hate myself for it because I feel a bit bad. But it is genuinely funny. And then I'm nearly done. I've got one more episode. So after we finished speaking, I will probably watch it. I've got one more episode left in season 1 of Deadwood, which has turned out to be absolutely gripping stuff. Really, really brilliant series. So looking forward to that finale.
Never saw that one. I know there's lots of swearing in it.
There is a lot of swearing. There's a lot of swearing in it. But like baby Kristen Bell turned up in it. And I was like, oh, look, it's Veronica Mars. And so I looked it up because I was like, oh, is this after she did Veronica Mars? Because she looked so young. No, it was before she did Veronica Mars. They came out the same year. And I thought Deadwood was like 10 years after Veronica Mars. And I don't know how I've got that in my head. I thought Deadwood was way more recent than it is.
No, it's like same era as Sopranos. It's like one of the early.
It's 2004. They both came out in 2004. Sopranos came out in 1999, I think, and And when I started watching it, I was very taken aback because one of the shots you see in the opening credits is, of course, the Twin Towers.
Right.
And those kind of things always go, that's dated this. You immediately know where you are. But yeah, so I had no idea that it was as old. It's like, 20 years old, and I had no concept of that. So.
Well, sounds good. Well, enjoy that. Enjoy the finale for Deadwood. And we'll come back next week to talk about episode 2 of Pan Am.
Yes, and as a reminder, if you are listening to this on Spotify, Dan can be found on TikTok at Dan Watches Movies, and I can be found at A Quiet Life with Me. And maybe one day in the next 3 months, I'll post a video. I don't know, I haven't posted a video for so long.
Don't worry about it, it's all good. Right.
All right, lovely to speak to you again, and I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.